Hi everyone. Tonight I'm standing up so you can see how big Fluffy and Chocolate are now. And I want to thank all of you who send them love and hugs. They really are the most wonderful furry souls. And it warms my heart to know how many of you out there have cats and dogs and that you love Earth life like I do. Especially at this time in history where we're waiting for the truth to be announced that we are not alone in this universe. And there go Fluffy and Chocolate for freedom. And that the irony is that in this revolutionary time of more truths and revelations, humans are on a dangerous path if we don't stop CO2 buildup and global warming as soon as possible. A little more about that in a few minutes. But I would like to begin tonight where I left off last Wednesday after I reported on my Earthfiles YouTube channel about the bloodless cat mutilations in Thurston County in Washington State. Since then, I have produced an in-depth report about those bloodless cat mutilations at my news website, www.earthfiles.com. And I have interviewed Mr. David Jinks. He is the hospital manager of the Companion Veterinary Hospital in Lacey, Washington, just east of Olympia. Olympia is the Thurston County seat in the capital of Washington State, where over at least 2 or 3 decades there have been repeated half-cat mutilations and other kinds of cat mutilations. And Mr. Jinks told me that this week he has talked with 2 investigators of the current 7 known cat mutilations that have occurred since February 2018 up to this past week. He confirms that the 7 unexplained bloodless killings are not the work of natural predators.
They clearly were not predatory behavior. They didn't have clear bite marks or bloody margins. One of the peculiar aspects about these cases, the spine had been removed from these cats. All 7 had a clean slice through the abdomen. I asked what kind of tool, implement did they suspect, and she said probably a scalpel, pretty precise, with an implement designed for surgical procedures. She said they were clean, the organs were all missing, the spine was missing on the overall.
Now, the spine removal is a new facet. It is my understanding that there is a very precise cut where the neck bone is hooking into what would be the spine, and then the spine is removed all the way down through to the end of the tailbone.
That's a detail that I haven't been able to get specific confirmation of because that moves into the area of necropsies, which are ultimately to be used in criminal proceedings.
If you take the spine of a cat out, how do you do it since the spine is attached to a rib cage?
That is a good question.
And if any listener has more information about these 7 new bloodless cat mutilations in Thurston County, Washington, please call the Thurston County Joint Animal Services at area code 360-352-2510. Also, Posado's Safe Haven is offering a $1,500 reward, and Q13 Fox TV News will match that to bring the reward up to $3,000 for information that leads to an arrest and conviction in any of these cat mutilation cases. Also, today in August 15th's news, Trump's stripping of former CIA Director John Brennan's security clearance as punishment for criticizing President Trump is a warning shot across the bow of what's happening to American democracy. And adding to the questions about our future was U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis in Brasilia, Brazil, during his first tour of South America as Defense Secretary on Sunday, August 12th. he reversed his stand on Trump's Space Force. General Mattis said, quote, "I was not going against setting up a Space Force. What I was against was rushing to do that before we define those problems." He means in outer space. Close quote. Even though Congress must approve the creation of a sixth Space Force military branch, it is expected now, with General Mattis's support, that the Pentagon will first establish a Space Command and a Space Development Agency before the Space Force is ever institutionalized by Congress. In other space news, the New York Times had a long article with photographs on Sunday, August 14th, about a, quote, group in Los Angeles that has attracted UFO enthusiasts from all over the world. They have formed together around the common question, what are these things in the sky exactly, and how can they know more about them, close quote. When the Times asked the group what they do to try to study UFOs, most said it has to do with meditation, which would be consciousness. Quote, "Some say that they feel physical sensations when they do this meditation trying to contact with a UFO. And as soon as someone in the group spots something, they yell to a man who has a telescope connected to a camera and a screen, and he records whatever happens to study later in video editing on a computer. Their goal is to look harder and be more analytical and critical about the evidence of UFOs in the sky, but to open up more of the world's dialogue and more people's minds that there are unidentified aerial phenomena in our skies, have been for decades, centuries, and the New York Times in December 16, 2017, put a series of those 3 infrared videos in the newspaper, and the Washington Post and Politico did too, about something that the jet pilots said were unidentified aerial phenomena or UFOs, and one of which might have been moving from the standpoint of our measuring at 96,000 miles an hour, when it may have been flipping in and out of another dimension, or it might have simply been going invisible to us because of a manipulation of time and space. Also, To the Stars has released a new video on the web about studying alleged materials from alleged UFO crashes. To the Stars says it now has, quote, Rendlesham Forest sample of shavings with size on the order of 1 millimeter, close quote. That's smaller than a 16th of an inch. In addition, I know that To the Stars also now has a small piece of bismuth and magnesium zinc layered metal, allegedly from the underside of a wedge-shaped UFO that crashed in New Mexico in 1947. It's because I have been studying that same nano-layered metal since May of 1996, when Art Bell, God rest his soul, and I received some pieces from a U.S. Army sergeant that was left to him by his grandfather, who served in Army security at the time of the 1947 UFO crashes in New Mexico. I hand-delivered a piece to the Stars office in San Diego, California on Monday, August 6th, and I know one of the lab challenges will be to expose this layered metal that I gave to them for a period of time to test, to see if in the presence of high terahertz frequencies, if gravity can be affected, maybe even neutralized, as some scientists have hinted. But perhaps the most important news of all this day of August 15, 2018, was the New York Times op-ed by Thomas Friedman entitled, If Mother Nature Gets a Vote in 2020. He writes, quote, What if all the extreme weather this year linked to global climate change gets even worse and more costly? If you look at all the destructive, extreme weather buffeting the world this summer of 2018, close quote, and then Friedman lists what makes this year of 2018 different from all previous years. Europe is baking in unrelenting heat. California is fighting the biggest wildfire it has ever seen. British Columbia in Canada has had 460 new wildfires break out in a single day. Sweden has terrible wild forest fires that are extending north into the Arctic Circle, where in August temperatures there have reached 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Japan has the heaviest rainfall ever recorded and the highest temperature ever recorded, 106 degrees Fahrenheit, in Kumagaya, northwest of Tokyo. Death Valley in California reached 127 degrees Fahrenheit, breaking its own heat record. Eastern Australia has the worst drought in decades, where a dairy farmer told the BBC last week, quote, "It's gotten to the point where it is cheaper to shoot your cows than it is to feed them," close quote. On my upcoming August 30th Coast to Coast AM 3-hour broadcast, one of my news updates will be about why are the wildfires of 2018 so ferocious. But tonight, I want to link what's happening to a journal Science report in January of 2018 that warned the oceans on our planet are losing oxygen. Here are some of the science alarming facts. Since 1968, that's over the past 50 years, the volume of the ocean that has no oxygen at all has quadrupled in size. Low oxygen regions of open waters have expanded by the size of Europe. And the reason? Warmer seawater holds less oxygen and accelerates the worldwide consumption of oxygen by microorganisms. In the January 2018 journal Science, a German oceanographer calculates that 50 years of data show that the Earth's oceans have lost 2% of their oxygen since only 1960. That provoked chemist Dr. Sune Nielsen at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts to say, quote, 2% is pretty significant. That's actually pretty scary in only 58 years, close quote. Dr. Nielsen has studied one of the most severe crises of the past 100 million years on our planet, known as oceanic anoxic, that is without oxygen, oceanic anoxic event number 2. 94 million years ago, a mysterious and gigantic pulse of carbon dioxide rose from the bottom of the Earth's oceans. And it caused this planet to warm, and the waters rose higher, and much without any oxygen in them. Anoxic water. There was no oxygen at the bottom of the entire continental shelf, and it was a global catastrophe that killed sea life. Why did this happen 94 million years ago? The cause is now thought to have been an eruption of molten lava deep beneath waters that separated North and South America in a vast expanse of frozen lava that stretches from Ecuador in the Pacific to the Antilles in the Atlantic. This event lasted for almost 500,000 years, but it took only on the order of thousands of years of diminishing oxygen to reach its choking off life. The bad news is, according to Dr. Nielsen, quote, that the rates between now in 2018 and that event 94 million years ago are pretty comparable in scientific terms. Dead zones today are expanding at a global scale, pretty much everywhere you see around the world. Around the continental shelves, you see larger and more persistent dead zones, and that is what you would expect if the ocean is losing its oxygen, close quote. And today, it's not as warm as it was during the Cretaceous greenhouse, but billions of humans on Earth now are releasing phosphorus and nitrogen fertilizers into the world's waters and filling the atmosphere with greenhouse gases that will keep warming Earth. And that is why scientists are worried that the oceanic anoxic event 2 from 94 million years ago could happen again, wiping out most of Earth life and leaving the oceans to bacteria. To me, the bottom line in everything, all these headlines today, if all of the human family on this planet understood for real education about what is at stake here, our planet and our life on this planet is at stake. It isn't some far-off thing 100 million years from now. We're talking about scientists that are worried right now. And some are saying if we don't pull back CO2 and methane, within 15 years, it will tip out. There would be no pulling back. The planet will continue to heat until something else shakes it up. Humans, whether it's talking about other life in the universe, which we deserve to know about, if it means that we need to understand all of the facts about what is actually happening on our own planet, that what is it that 7.2 billion people are now, because a lot of them are unconscious of what happens in their daily lives, that translates out into a warming atmosphere, that translates out into oceans that have no oxygen, that translates out into massive countrywide areas of plastic on the oceans. And then look at what is happening right now in Florida from the red tide, one of the worst red tides ever, and millions and millions and millions of fish going up the food chain. Will dolphins and porpoises, will they be dying in mass? Some have already died. It isn't hysteria. It is common sense that every one of us needs to be educated with facts and truth. We are at such a revolutionary time, and we all need to be educated about what the facts are, no longer lulled by policies of denial, no longer lulled by policies of lies allegedly in the interests of national security, leaving a planet dumb and blind about what is out in our cosmos, what is in our Milky Way, what is in our solar system, what is under the ground on our planet, and what we, Homo sapiens sapien, the current surface life, are up against. And that in our own ignorance, because we've been kept dumb and blind on purpose, our Earth, the only home we currently have, faces a huge change. The Earth will continue to evolve. The Earth has survived for 4.5 billion years. But humanity, Homo sapiens sapien in this current model, only overlap with Neanderthalensis 40,000 years ago. We're babies on the surface of this planet. We're trying to stand up as teenagers so that we can evolve as adults that will be able to meet other intelligences in this universe, be able to communicate and not destroy our own planet. I hope everybody here tonight finds that they agree with me on this score that we all need more education. And I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying in my own world to keep sharing with you all what I think are some of the most important changing statistics every Wednesday night, and that I truly respect and appreciate all of the emails that I get from you. There's so many intelligent people who are frustrated in their own jobs because they feel that they're restricted and they don't know how to tell the truth, and they're sending me emails. So for all of you listening tonight, from the Half Cats in Thurston County, Washington, and many other places, including London, England, large animal mutilations in Argentina, I'm going to be posting a report on that very soon, other evolutions of the phenomena in its interaction with the earth. In the context, I'm convinced we have allies. That's why I feel no fear. And I don't want you to feel fear. But if we all get truth and facts, and we can all discuss it in open forums without fear that now we are losing even our freedom to explore and share it with each other on the web without something being shut down. We keep going, and that what I would like to do now is to segue to one of my most favorite parts, and that is your questions, your wonderful, intelligent questions that help me think about what I'm doing, and that I hope tonight that you will all give me back some feedback in email and to Lori in the chat about whether or not you like my doing this as a bit more of a newscast, because if you do, I'm going to start feeding in more audio and video. We're going to try this as we keep evolving. I would love your feedback. And now, Lori, let's go to some questions.
Oh, and we've got some great ones tonight also. Before we start, if we could just thank the incredible people who gave us super chats tonight. Nancy Volker, Douglas Jones, Vicki, Donna, Jana Gibson. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It really matters. It really means a lot, because it takes a lot to do all of this. And I am so grateful that some of you feel that you can share back to me. And it's a wonderful feeling. Thank you very much.
Our first question is from Brian. Does Linda know, is MJ12 still around? And if so, who sits now on MJ12?
It's a question all of us would like to know. I would say that probably the latest hypothesis is that MJ12, as the original group that Harry S. Truman appointed with a secret executive order in 1947, phased into something new with the death of its last 12th member back in around 1982. And in that period, 82 to 85, 86, I know that I was getting fascinating input from whistleblower types then about the fact that MJ12 was still doing its work, but that it had changed. It had changed its name. It had changed something about the character in the way that the first group were working. It was stressed to me at the time. I cannot prove this, but I'm sharing because it's an insight about how our government works and keeps huge secrets. It was stressed to me in the early 1980s that we'll call it the evolving phase of MJ12 from the original Truman Group. They were buried in undersecretaries of agriculture, interior, energy. They would be in offices that were not subject to elections or even appointment that they were the they went into the interstitial layers of the bureaucracy of our government so that they could continue passing the batons of their investigation and their work going back to at least 1947 and keep MJ12, I'm using that word because we all know it, going with its investigations of unidentified aerial objects and entities, biological, clones, androids, robots, and the big question, who or what are the prime intelligences behind all of these sub-layers that today we would call artificial intelligence, that they have used to spread out into the universe. The prime intelligence does not have to do that. And that there is, as I understand it, there is a huge, it may be acres, I have no idea the size, but a huge archive, highly, highly classified, that is supposed to be underground in Suitland, Maryland, and that the Atomic Energy Commission files and the Navy, the Department of Navy files from World War II onward. That was the big box in which the UFO, ET, time traveler, other dimensions, androids, clones, all of it, the confusion of all of it, was being handled through classifications and what would be special access programs through those two departments. The Atomic Energy Commission changed to the Department of Energy, and it means that everything that was being transmitted about extraterrestrials, UFOs, technology, hybridization, genetic manipulation, animal mutilations, human abductions, and on, it would have been going through the lens, we'll call it lens, of the Atomic Energy Commission files and the Navy files. And that means in some ways that there was a policy in place, if that's all true, that even in the 40s, 50s, 60s, when there were standing orders in the 1950s to shoot down UFOs, and as Len Stringfield told me from his own firsthand personal experience in the Air Force, he said, quote, Linda, payback was terrible, was painful, was the word he used. Meaning, we're not under full-bore attack by something. But if we have military policies and we are attacking UFO UAPs, they're not just going to take it. There's going to be some kind of retaliation. And that when there was retaliation, when there was interference with discs flying around where we were trying to learn how to do the rocket launches in southern New Mexico, when we started putting in the missiles in the Minuteman program in the United States, and craft, small and large, were clearly being seen by dozens of military people, interfered with, headlines like in New Mexico, they called it peculiar phenomena. Headlines, I have headlines from the newspapers back in 47 to 49, 50, peculiar phenomena. And these were white round discs that were traveling right with our experimental rocket launches that came from the German scientists that were out of Project Paperclip after World War II. So that means right from the get-go, with Werner von Braun and those scientists here, and they're trying to set up for the United States a rocket program similar to what they were doing in Germany, to have those rockets launch in tests and have round, white, peculiar phenomenon just tracking like the speed of the rocket was nothing. and that whatever, there were a couple of incidents that made the newspapers about the fact that the rockets went straight down into the ground with the white objects nearby. All of that says 2 + 2 = 4. We had some kind of a challenge from something that was clearly not human, and to say it was overtly hostile is not correct. It was monitoring, and it was interfering, and if we attacked it, it attacked back. But now it is 2018, and I assume that the same kind of disciplined minds, with all of the back archives, going back to World War II and back as far as Cape Girardeau, Missouri in 1941, that an MJ-12 type body, whatever it is today, is still trying to make contact with non-humans that they would consider to at least be allies, so that they can learn about whether or not, as Lynn Buchanan, the control remote viewer, told John Burroughs and me on Phenomena Radio in 2015. Linda, the universe is teeming with life. We control remote viewers, everybody got that. But some are friendly and some are not friendly. Some are telepathic and friendly, and some are not telepathic and friendly. And those that are unfriendly can be in those two categories. And Lynn said, if we didn't have the allies that we know come from someplace else, we might not be here. And so that is again tying back to where I began this evening. We've got to learn more. The whole human family needs to understand more. Governments keep saying we'll all collapse and fall down on the ground crying and screaming. The stock market will crash, religions will fall. I don't think that's true in 2018 at all. I think that the millennial generation is already way beyond, and they just want to know the truth like you and I. So thank you for that question.
So we have a couple of more people to thank for their super chats. Olivia Majbrit, excuse me if I'm saying that incorrectly, and One Ida Shard. Thank you so much for your super chats.
I thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate it.
So we have a lot of questions, Linda, so I'm going to
All right.
the next good one. I hope I'm going to say this correctly. Chance wants to know, do you believe in the Lemuria theory?
Well, you know, that is really a good question. In the whistleblower category, in my professional life, even though, again, I don't have proof, and that's why I have real X-Files at Earthfiles, and I say at my website, I put everything that I can't prove into real X-Files, which does not mean that all the X-Files are not true. And I put animal mutilations in real X-Files because then it's by subscription only, and that legally infers that the person is giving their permission, because even though there's no gore, even though these are very precise images that I am trying to separate out and say, if it's an animal mutilation story, then it's going to go into real X-Files. But, and Lori, ask me the question again.
They wanted to know if you believe in
Lemuria. Yeah.
theory.
And why I went off onto that branch about real X-Files is Lemuria, in my mind, is in that category of history that comes to the 20th and the 21st centuries as quote-unquote mythology. And yet, the whistleblowers that I have talked to who have said, I mean, they've literally said, just like William Mills Tompkins, the man who lived to be, I think, 94 or 95, and he died just a few months ago. And he had worked as a teenager and then went into the Navy making scale models, said that he had seen all of this material about the moon and astronauts, and that Atlantis was a part of extraterrestrial habitation or even cohabitation on this planet, meaning that there is a concept that I keep running into, that we're on a planet that is like a 2-story apartment, and human life is on the surface. But down in pockets, in caverns, in whatever are the spaces that are below, and below the basins of the oceans and the seas, which take up 2/3 of the Earth, down to the Mariana Trench, 6.5 miles. Well, just take a drill down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, go through the mud and the dirt. What might you come out into? And that the Atlantis, Lemuria, Anunnaki, that world that has been taught to us as being mythology is not mythology at all. That these are distant communications from a series of, and this is the catchword, are we talking now anymore as we become more sophisticated about all this? Extraterrestrial biological entities, my definition would be that they might have lived on Mars, might have come from a planet orbiting Sirius, might have come from a planet orbiting Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, 38 light years from Earth, or from someplace else in the Milky Way galaxy or another galaxy, but they would be in the matter worlds of this matter universe. That, to me, is my definition of extraterrestrial biological entities. And the government has this acronym called EBAs or EBENs. But more and more keeps emerging in current day whistleblowers that we are dealing with intelligences that use portals in space-time to travel. And that if you understand and can control gravity, if you can control the speed of light, if you understand frequency relationships in this matter universe and the fact that there are other dimensions, another dimension could overlay where I am right now and have horses running through it. And there would be no consciousness. We would have no consciousness that another dimension has got all this action going on right now, or in your house or anywhere. It's a hard concept. But that the idea of other dimensions are intimate to understanding what the true structure of our matter universe is, juxtaposed with those dimensions. And that if you know how to focus on the frequencies of specific, on the Earth we would call it a latitude, longitude. In other dimensions, the coordinates might be in 3, 4, 5, 6 parameters, I have no idea. But different parameters that will come into a specific frequency signature. And if you are on Mars, on a planet at Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, Lyra, Orion's belt, wherever you are, if you know how to work with resonant frequencies, you could pop out. It would explain the popping in and popping out of so many UFO sightings, including one I saw in Gulf Breeze with other people. There were 4 of us. And it popped in, and it had a very bizarre sparkle and was long and yellow. And we are watching it, and we are all yelling at each other, "What is this?" And it popped back out. It was traveling, came in, popped out. Well, this is the idea that when you go to another frequency that is in another dimension, you leave this matter universe. And that the way it's been explained to me, if you know what you're doing with gravity, space, time, and light, you can then chart or dial in, or however it's done, a coordinate that could be 5 billion light years from where you started in this matter universe. You go into a dimension, and just like a cushion shot on a pool table, you're back in this universe, but you traveled 5 billion light years in what might be, in terms of time on Earth, 5 minutes. None of us were in these kinds of discussions back in 1980, 85. It wasn't at this level of, wow, this is probably what is really going on, because this is the kind of dialogue that whistleblower scientists are talking about. So if Lemuria and Atlantis and the Anunnaki and maybe the Etruscans and maybe the Basque are hybridizations of extraterrestrial mixtures with humans and have that high level of Rh negative blood, and the idea that today, John Burroughs and I have talked about this on Phenomena Radio, that there's an active program by our government to learn as much about the genetic makeup of humans on the planet now, looking for non-human human hybrids. And this would fit into the idea that there have been various civilizations of non-Homo sapien sapien based on our planet, maybe on Mars, maybe going back 1 million, 500 million, 1 billion years, and that there have been various stages of intelligences that would explain the dramatic pyramids and references to frequencies, the ability to neutralize gravity with technology to build, not the current academic accepted explanation that pyramids were built by thousands of slaves. And ask yourself this question. Why would fellow humans from the last 35,000 year transition from Neanderthalensis, why would any Homo sapien sapien want to lie to their fellow human family about UFOs, ETs, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, Anunnaki, even the Greeks? It's my understanding from a government guy, retired. The Greeks were, he said, full-blood ETs based on this planet. Why? When did the lies start? How long ago? For what reason? To keep humanity in the dark about other life in the universe, advanced intelligences on our own planet, living in like a second story, us on top, being harvested, manipulated, deceived. As John Keel wrote, I think it's his best book, Our Haunted Planet. Our planet has had a haunted characterization for millennia because something else is on Earth with us. Now in the past, and no doubt in the future. And this, I think to my very soul, this is the time that we all deserve to be told the truth. So join me in my hope that by New Year's Day 2019, we will have had that big headline around the world, whether it's coming from science, from history, from Mars microbes, fast radio bursts, whatever it comes from, that we're not alone in this universe. We never have been. And I thank you for being with me tonight.